Wealth and happiness are often treated like prizes handed out by luck. Some people spend decades waiting for the right opportunity, the right connection, the right market, or the right moment. Yet the uncomfortable truth is that many of the people who build extraordinary lives are not simply luckier than everyone else. They are operating by a completely different set of principles. The promise of building wealth and happiness without relying on luck begins with a simple but powerful shift. Change your mindset. Most people focus on external circumstances while ignoring the internal operating system that shapes every decision they make. And that is precisely where the biggest advantage is hiding. There is a reason why some individuals seem to attract opportunities, freedom, and fulfillment wherever they go. The answer has very little to do with chance, and far more to do with how they think, what they prioritize, and the systems they build around their lives. In the Almanack of Naval Ravikant, Naval presents a collection of ideas that challenge many of the assumptions society teaches about success, money, and happiness. But there is one principle connecting all of these ideas that most people completely overlook. A principle so powerful that once it clicks, wealth stops looking random, happiness stops feeling elusive, and success begins to appear far more predictable than most people realize. And when you discover the final lesson in this journey, you'll understand why so many intelligent and hardworking people remain stuck for years while others steadily create freedom, fulfillment, and financial abundance. The illusion of luck and the power of total responsibility. The moment you stop blaming luck, your life begins to change. Most people talk about luck as if it were the deciding factor behind success. They look at wealthy entrepreneurs, influential creators, and fulfilled individuals and assume those people simply happen to be in the right place at the right time. What rarely gets noticed is everything that happened before the opportunity appeared. Luck often looks magical from a distance. Up close, it usually looks like preparation, courage, and responsibility. Naval argues that one of the most powerful decisions a person can make is to become fully accountable for the outcomes of their life. Not partially accountable. Not accountable only when things go well. Completely accountable. This idea is uncomfortable because it removes the most convenient excuse available. If circumstances are always to blame, then there is no need to change. But the moment responsibility becomes total, something remarkable happens. Power returns. The focus shifts away from what the world owes and toward what can actually be controlled. Skills can be developed. Relationships can be nurtured. Opportunities can be created. Decisions can be improved. Gradually, what once appeared to be luck starts becoming a predictable consequence of consistent action. Consider two people facing the same obstacle. One sees proof that life is unfair. The other sees information. The first waits. The second adapts. Years later, their results appear dramatically different, even though the defining difference was not intelligence, talent, or luck. It was ownership. This does not mean controlling everything. No one can. It means refusing to surrender responsibility for the choices that remain available. And yet, even complete responsibility is not enough. Because there is another factor that determines whether your efforts generate ordinary results or extraordinary ones. A hidden asset that the market values far more than credentials, titles, or years of experience. And once you understand it, you'll begin to see why some people become impossible to replace. Specific knowledge. The asset. Nobody can copy. The greatest wealth-building asset is hidden inside your uniqueness. Most people spend years trying to become more like everyone else. They follow conventional paths, collect credentials, imitate successful people, and compete in crowded arenas where thousands are offering nearly identical value. The problem is that competition becomes brutal when there is nothing distinctive about what you bring to the table. Naval introduces a different way of thinking. Instead of asking how to fit into an existing mold, ask what combination of talents, interests, experiences, and curiosities makes you different from everyone else. This is what he calls specific knowledge. Specific knowledge is not usually found in textbooks. It cannot be fully taught in a classroom. It emerges from the intersection of what comes naturally to you and what the world finds valuable. Often, the person possessing it doesn't even realize how rare it is because it feels effortless. That is why many people ignore their greatest advantage. They assume that if something feels natural, it cannot be valuable. Meanwhile, others are desperately trying to learn what comes instinctively to them. History is filled with examples of people who created extraordinary value by leaning into their unique strengths instead of chasing generic expertise. The market rewards originality far more than imitation because original thinking creates opportunities that competition cannot easily replicate. The real challenge is not discovering what everyone else wants. The real challenge is discovering what only you can contribute. When that alignment happens, work becomes more effective, opportunities become more abundant, and the path toward wealth begins to accelerate. Instead of fighting thousands of competitors for the same rewards, you start operating in a space that naturally belongs to you. But this raises an important question. Even if you discover a unique skill, how do you transform that skill into results that grow beyond the limits of your time and effort? This is where the next principle changes the game entirely. Because the biggest fortunes are not built by working harder. They are built by learning how to multiply impact, building leverage to multiply results. Hard work alone has a ceiling, leverage does not. Many people spend their entire lives trapped in a simple equation. More hours equal more income. The moment they stop working, the results stop growing. It feels productive, but it creates an invisible prison where freedom remains permanently out of reach. This is where Naval introduces one of the most transformative ideas in modern wealth creation: leverage. Leverage is the ability to produce results far beyond the direct effort invested. It allows one decision, one creation, or one system to continue generating value long after the initial work is done. For most of human history, leverage belonged primarily to those who controlled land, capital, or large organizations. Today, something extraordinary has happened. Technology has democratized leverage. A single piece of software can serve millions of people. A video can reach audiences across the world while its creator sleeps. A digital product can be sold thousands of times without being rebuilt. A great idea can spread globally in a matter of hours. This changes the rules completely. The wealthiest individuals of the modern era rarely earn more because they work more hours. They earn more because their efforts are connected to systems that scale. Their work continues moving even when they are not actively pushing it forward. The deeper lesson is not merely financial. Leverage forces a different way of thinking. Instead of asking, "How can I do more?" the question becomes, "How can I create something that keeps working after I'm done?" That shift separates linear growth from exponential growth. Yet there is a hidden danger that almost nobody talks about. Many people successfully build wealth, influence, and leverage only to discover that none of it delivers the peace they expected. They win the external game while quietly losing the internal one. And that leads directly to the most surprising part of Naval's philosophy, a perspective on happiness that challenges everything society teaches about success. The architecture of happiness. According to Naval Ravikant, the mind creates suffering long before reality does. Most people treat happiness as a future achievement. They believe it will arrive after the promotion, after the investment succeeds, after the business grows, or after life finally matches the image they have built in their heads. The tragedy is that this pursuit often becomes endless. Every goal achieved creates another goal. Every desire satisfied gives birth to a new desire. The finish line keeps moving, and many people spend decades chasing a version of happiness that always seems one step ahead. Naval offers a radically different perspective. Happiness is not something waiting in the future. It is a skill, a practice, a way of relating to reality. This idea feels counterintuitive because society trains people to focus almost exclusively on external outcomes. Yet some individuals remain anxious despite immense success, while others experience deep contentment with far fewer possessions and achievements. The difference is not necessarily what they have, it is the quality of their minds. A restless mind constantly searches for problems, comparisons, and unmet expectations. Even victories become temporary because attention immediately shifts to what is still missing. In contrast, a trained mind develops the ability to observe thoughts without becoming controlled by them. This is where true freedom begins. Not freedom from work, not freedom from responsibility, freedom from the constant internal noise that steals peace from the present moment. One of the most powerful realizations is that many desires are inherited rather than chosen. Society, advertising, social media, and comparison quietly shape ambitions that may have little connection to genuine fulfillment. As long as those borrowed desires remain unquestioned, happiness remains dependent on circumstances outside personal control. The deeper someone understands this, the less power external chaos has over their inner state. But there is an even bigger realization waiting ahead. Because wealth and happiness are often presented as separate pursuits, one belonging to the material world and the other to the spiritual world. Naval argues that this separation is largely an illusion, and once these two ideas come together, the definition of success changes forever. The true wealth, where freedom and serenity meet. The ultimate goal was never money. It was freedom. At the beginning of this journey, a question was left hanging in the air. Why do some people steadily build wealth and happiness while others remain trapped, waiting for luck to change their lives? The answer is no longer hidden. Those who transform their lives stop treating wealth as a lottery and start treating it as a consequence. They take responsibility instead of making excuses. They develop specific knowledge instead of competing blindly. They build leverage instead of selling every hour of their lives. And they cultivate inner peace instead of postponing happiness for some distant future. What makes this philosophy so powerful is that none of these principles stand alone. Responsibility creates direction. Specific knowledge creates value. Leverage creates scale. A disciplined mind creates peace. Together, they form something much greater than financial success. They create freedom, not the fantasy of escaping all challenges, but the ability to choose how to spend your time, where to focus your energy, and what kind of life is truly worth living. Many people spend years climbing a ladder only to discover it was leaning against the wrong wall. They accumulate money while sacrificing peace. Others pursue peace while neglecting the practical realities that create independence. Both paths leave something important unfinished. The deeper lesson is that wealth and happiness are not enemies competing for attention. They are allies when built on the right foundation. This is why the final shift is not about earning more, owning more, or achieving more. It is about becoming the kind of person who no longer depends on luck for progress, approval for confidence, or external validation for fulfillment. And perhaps that is the most valuable insight of all. The life most people are waiting for is not hidden behind a lucky break. It begins the moment a different mindset takes control. The moment responsibility replaces excuses. The moment intentionality replaces drift. The moment freedom becomes the objective instead of status. Because real wealth is not measured by what sits in a bank account. Real wealth is waking up each day with the freedom to think independently, act deliberately, and live peacefully. And once that becomes your definition of success, luck stops being a requirement. It becomes a bonus.